You are now live. Close unused applications. That stuff for our visuals, we just got straight video. I'm gonna read off some of these notices I'm getting. Action needed. Check your internet connection. Your live stream is experiencing connection issues. Try troubleshooting your internet connection or reboot your router. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna lower the, we're gonna go ahead and cut this off. Over here, we're live. Second show. Matter of fact, hold on, let me slow down. First, thanks to God, we went to church today. I didn't even put on a shirt. We went to church today. Too low FPS. The current frame rate is too low. We're gonna just keep going. However it look, we're gonna just see. We gotta just keep pushing. Get myself together a little bit. Just in the video it's backwards, so it's kind of throwing me off. Cat hairs and shit all over me. But it's all good. Comment mode, settings, all viewers, followers, keywords, muted. Okay, we're gonna keep pushing. Let me just see what's going on with y'all. Too low. Whatever. Alright, we're gonna keep pushing. As far as I can see, we live. Whether people can see it live or if it's creating issues, maybe it ain't playing straight up or whatever it is, I'm not sure. But it's still Sunday. You see we got our little set design going. We got some lighting kicked in a little bit. Let's see, here's a little plus. Pull that up a little bit. We still working out technicalities, y'all. Forgive me. We're still working out technicalities. Try to get it, like I say, try to get our quality up. But before I get started, I gotta get it cracking. It's cracking right here on Facebook as far as I can see. But I gotta get this cracking on here. And do a new show. Here we're gonna add our intro music. We're gonna add that to the episode. It ain't even the right one. We'll make some adjustments later. But I do want to make sure that something goes up today. That we get something, you know, because it's Sunday. We try to do something every Sunday. And with this right here, even though we late, I kind of didn't mind getting on here late, as far as late night. You know, the title of this show is called "This Is Personal." Meaning the podcast is personal. It's not necessarily audience seeking. We want to appreciate any audience we get. What is that? Is that here? What is that here? That's weird. Getting all self-conscious. That's how them stars and shit be. They be like, oh, it makes me. Oh, you can see blood on my good side. But I still got to get it cracking on here. Matter of fact, let's plug this up. Music and talk. Add Spotify music to your show. Create your own music plus talk episode. Just add any Spotify songs. No. You don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to record. So we got this mic right here. Cord. And we're recording as far as that goes. Now let's go here. And we're recording here. So, hello everybody. All right, forgive me. We ain't even got to taking care of the sound quality. From this episode, I think that over this next week, we better pay more attention to the sound quality. Make sure the sound quality is up. And I think we got some video quality up as far as on my end. How it's looking, whether as far as being live, I'm not sure yet. Like I said last time, like anybody listening, I couldn't get no feedback. I couldn't really figure out. People say, "Oh, I can't hear you," or "Your video too slow," or nothing like that. I couldn't figure it out, so I still don't know. But as far as on my end, it's looking a lot better. That's for sure. For shizzle. So it's looking a lot better. Hopefully the sound quality is better. I got my little what they call it, a lapel mic. This is called a lapel mic. So actually you can clamp it on here or whatever. You know, got the little lapel mic right here. So we'll see how that goes. I really don't want it to be like such a visual. Alright. Yeah, that's a little better. As far as it blends, as far as what I can see right here, it's like blended a lot better. Let's see if I can go full screen on my end. Alright. So it's still giving me turn off all notifications. Now we don't need no notifications as far as Windows or whatever. Still feel whopped. I don't know my shit. It's weird because it's reverse. Anyway, whatever. Then I need to just throw on a shirt. Yeah, this look all whopped and shit. Hold on, man. Let me go grab me a t-shirt or something. Oh no! I forgot about the damn mic. Hair and makeup, get hair and makeup over here now. It still give me action needed. The current frame rate is too low. Please set the frame rate to 15 to 60 frames per second. I'm not sure where that setting is right now. We still come out with a video, we can still possibly edit later or whatever. Plus, like I said, as long as I gotta get used to this mirror effect. Cheerios, I ain't trying to be representing them. I like that, I like the shirt. Yeah, I like that shirt, but we ain't getting paid for no branding or nothing right now. Ain't nobody paying us for they logos and nothing to be on the shows right now. So that mirror got me tripping. All right, so all right, here we go. Excuse me. Like I say, hopefully, we still come out with some type of video on the back end of this. So if anybody's watching live, I apologize if it's messed up or whatever. Do I want to hold this? Get myself together. Oh, maybe it's in the camera settings. Maybe I could change that in the camera settings, huh? Let's see if I could change that in the camera settings. The frame rate. Yeah, man, definitely, man. If people watching the show, as I learn, you'll learn. Another app is using the camera already. Okay, well, let's go to settings. Show advanced controls, go to ratio. Let's go to 60 hertz. Location. Well, I don't see the frame rate settings in there, so we're just gonna keep pushing. But so I think I don't know how much I'm gonna stay on topic, but the name of this show, the topic of this show is "This Is Personal." On the website, I put a page or a post up on the blog, kind of giving a little insight into what I feel as far as dealing with recovery and sobriety, and as far as sobriety and speaking about sobriety, and I can't see myself just grabbing onto the most common that I've seen narrative, as they call it. The type of speech. I mean, it's good for sobriety. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against it. I'm not speaking that it's wrong, that it's not helpful, that it's not useful. It is those things. But what I'm saying is that's not what I'm on this podcast to speak like. As far as you gotta do the work, one day at a time. It works if you work it. I understand people that's been in recovery programs, they might know what I'm talking about. If you go to meetings, like in the rooms, there's meetings, and you give a number how you feel. Are you craving? Certain milestones and landmarks and things that's in those types of meetings and in those conversations and in those programs that are good. But this is not a public meeting. This is a public journal. And as a journal, it's still personal. So I just want to kind of separate myself from it's about recovery. I don't want to have to fit into the lingo of that when this is my podcast, our podcast, or however. It's Fred and I. Fred is in the room asleep. I probably could get him out here to participate, but we'll work it out. Once we start dealing with the set and getting the set design and stuff like that. We're gonna definitely incorporate Fred, but for now, just getting it set up, I gotta just get it set up for me. And once I get it set up and functional to where I can move it around and know what I can and can't do, guaranteed we're gonna get Fred to be a participant. He is a participant, but I'm not gonna try to include him in the video too much right now. Just basically just happy we got a little scene, we got the little pictures in back, we got grandma's aloe vera that come from her yard. You know, I've been touching on these aloe veras since I came to Arizona. But yeah, so as a public, you know, I have my own personal experiences, my own personal opinions, my own personal desires. You know, it got to the point I had to start working on creating my own personal treatment plan. I'm not going to go into that right now, but as a podcast, like I said, I just don't want to have to fall under the expectation that I have to use the lingo that's common in recovery programs. Ain't nothing wrong with that lingo, but this is Fred and I's personal. Well, let me stop doing that. I might be getting the sound messed up. Popping them peas. But this is our personal podcast. This is our personal journal publicly. So, whatever topics I want to bring up, that's what I want to bring up. If something is on my heart or on my mind or in my past recollection or something I feel is important to speak about because of maybe something I experienced that week or, you know, just whatever the reason, if I want to speak on something, I'm speaking on it. You know, and I'm trying to be as positive. And public engagement. So to grow, I might have to hash out. I might feel the need to hash out a concept or a thought that's been in my mind that may be having a negative impact in my life. You know, or the perception of something in society that I know is affecting me or people like me that I want to speak about. You know, so I just want to establish that as this podcast. I want to establish that this is not a meeting. If you're looking for a recovery meeting, if you're looking for a certain form of inspiration that falls in that lingo, and you know, if I can, you know, if it comes out, I'm not going to avoid it. Hopefully, I can speak with that, with the power of those slogans and sayings and mottos and words of wisdom. I hope, you know, it does come out through me on this podcast, but I'm not here for that. I'm not here to extend that. Like if that's what you know, if that's what anybody needs, you know, like I said, go to the In the Rooms app. It's In the Rooms, all one word, In the Rooms. And go to the website, download the app. They got meetings, women meetings, LGBT, you know, meetings, all kinds of meetings. The title of the meeting will tell you what the meeting is about. So like if it may say young African American males. The patio. Hold up. Yeah, warm weather kicking in, so I guess the flies just like trying to like really get cracking right now. We're in here deep. Blessings over here stretching out. She probably gonna wake up, come mess with us. But so yeah, it's personal. This is personal. you know, I don't want to start off with my experience with recovery and recovery programs in Arizona. I don't want to start with that. When I start going into that, I'll tell my story as far as how I ended up participating with programs. A lot of people get off of drugs on their own, like cigarettes. They say, just one day, whether it was God or whatever their reason is, but they'll tell you, it was just one day they just stopped and didn't smoke another cigarette since, and it's been 10, 20 years, without any type of nicotine gum or patches or whatever. They found that strength within themselves, and one way or another they were able to overcome that addiction. Whereas me, it did start with a program. It started with a detox in Las Vegas, and after that detox, I didn't really know what to do after that, and I felt kind of lightheaded and off balance in a sense, and in order to feel a little normal, I drank some wine fresh out of detox, And that's a whole story because I ended up messing up my car that day. But once the podcast get going, I'll definitely share those stories and experiences, and hopefully somebody can gain something from it. I'll be able to look back at it and analyze it out loud. Analyze it. I've analyzed it to some extent internally, but I gotta participate more in society. But like I said, the title of this podcast is "This is Personal Podcasting." That is. So as a podcast, it's like a rap. Like if I say, all right, I'm finna put together an album, and my album is gonna be basically, about recovery, and addiction and whatever. It's still gonna be my album. Like if I wanted to cuss all through the album, or if I didn't want to cuss through the album, or or whatever, it's still gonna be my album. Like I'm not gonna be able to go to anywhere and say, okay, or just use all of the words and the lingo that I've learned in recovery. It still would be my words. I would have to rhyme them, rap them, get them to make sense. Figure out what beat I'm gonna use, where I'm gonna record it, when I'm gonna record it, what's the lyrical style. It's gonna be mine though, and that's how I feel with this podcast. Whereas if I was making it as if Fred and I as a entity, a trademark, copyrighted, non-profit, whatever entity, and if I wanted it to represent the common or the going culture of recovery as I've seen it so far, and then I would try to make sure I didn't deviate in a sense from that. But being that this podcast is personal, that means I can say whatever I want. If I wanna speak about like on the blog, if you go to Fred and I ST Fred and I podcast.wordpress.com. I'm sure it's a link right here on this Facebook or wherever you're watching this. It should be a link. But if you read that blog post, I mentioned Wino, the homie Wino. I heard when I talked to my brother, he mentioned that Wino had got caught up in one of them Fed type stings. It was my nephew that got caught up in before I got out of prison. I think that was like 2002 or something he went in. I got out in 2004. Did like 8 years, I think 8 years. A lot of people went at that time. Then I think it was one before he went. It was the one when he went. There might have been another one after he went. And now years had passed. And now there's another one just recently. and Rhino got caught up, and he's just so positive, always smiling. Everybody loved him. And I just saw it as, my first thought just popped in purely was that it probably was somebody he thought was cool. He probably was just trying to help them. Maybe that's what they, if somebody just trying to hustle a little bit, maybe they had kids or, whatever they reason is. Sometimes when it comes to drugs, especially selling drugs, as opposed to using drugs, but when it comes to selling drugs, it's not always everybody trying to get rich and be a kingpin. Sometimes it's like you want to pay your phone bill, or you know, the light bill coming up, and you know that these lights finna get cut off, and your girl is waiting, hoping you come back with this $250 to pay that light bill, and you know, shit, with a job that's 2 week dead pay, and it's easy to be like, well, maybe I got $50, maybe I can give me a double up, just hit the block for a couple days, and maybe I can work up this $250 and I'm done. When I got out of prison, I want to get into that life being fresh out, but at the same time, when I wasn't finding a job and I was hella on it, and the money that I had from people basically donating and things like that was running out. It got to a point, to some extent, I said, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just do this real quick, try to get some money, pay some bills or whatever, I needed to do, some things I had to do, and I just hoped that I could survive it, get a few dollars, and get back into trying to reintegrate into society. But it was just so hard. I didn't have no money, and so I dabbled. Luckily, I didn't end up in prison or nothing back behind it. Could have been strikes and all kind of shit. But so it ain't always like somebody is selling drugs trying to, and then with these, I could just see undercovers is, probably coming with a story that a person could feel. Like, hey man, my girl finna have a baby, we living at her mom's house and she hates me, and I need to just get some money so that we can get an apartment. I found a room we could rent so that we could be a family, but I need to get $500 plus $500 down payment. I got $250. If you know anybody that can help me get a little sack or whatever, and so I can, make a few transactions, whatever, get enough money so I can get this rent this room, so that me, like I ain't doing no hustling basically. I'm so far removed from that shit. It'd be hard for me to get into it, unless I'm fell in my hands and it was just like, all right, here it is. This is worth this much. I'm gonna go do it, whatever. But to make a decision to get into something, it's just so far. It's just too far for me. But even me, if somebody came to me with that type of story, and this person is an undercover, which could also mean it could be somebody I previously known or something. Ain't no telling. But let's say they come to me and with a story like that, and just saying like, hey man, if you could just middleman help me, point me in the right direction, who might have something where I could just get my hustle on for a few days, try to get this $500 so I can get this room for me and my girl before we have our baby. I probably, me right now, like I mean right now, I could see myself saying, what, let me see, man, such and such probably, I know that fool be hustling, or maybe this fool over here probably, come on man, let's go, let me cost, You know, hey, what up, bro? Meet me real quick. I'm gonna holler at you. Hey, man, this is the homie such and such. Probably don't even really know him, but still, you like, fuck it, try to help this dude. You know, next thing you know, conspiracy. You know, you now the fucking feds came, they done recorded shit. They gonna forgive the officer even though that's entrapment. You know, and next thing you know, you got a good person that really ain't even about that life. You know, that you done tugged on some heartstrings and tapped into this person's humanity and put it in the context of drug use or selling, buying and selling, that type of stuff, put it in that context. And the next thing you know, this dude think he helping an unborn child. And next thing you know, he part of a federal sting. And this person got paid for it. Let's say they was on their way to jail. They didn't let them off of their case. They probably the career criminal. Let them off of their case. And give them money. Probably give them identity and all kind of stuff. Put them on PC. Protective custody. You probably give them a house and shit. A new name and out somewhere. You know? And then it's a good person that ain't even about that life, that's putting effort into bettering the community best they know how. You know, now this person is in the feds. You know, then I see just a lot of stuff like a lot of people, like when I look at where I come from and how the feds come, they grab people and all of them do time. Come, grab 20 people, all of them do time. Come, grab 20 people, all of them do time. But then I'm in recovery here, and it's like so many people is in recovery because part of their motivation, I'm not saying that it is their primary motivation, but they are partly in some way or shape or form motivated by the fact that they caught a federal case, got released, and they have a chance to fight it from the streets. You know, and this ain't like a bail situation. This is like a public government program that they call Federal Pretrial. You know, I put a link to it in that post. You know, and I hear these people's stories. You know, just since I've been in recovery in Arizona, I've heard many. You know, I got a DUI, and through the DUI, I went to jail for a day. And when I got out of jail, I checked myself into a detox, and then through the detox, I got accepted into a recovery program. Part of fighting that case, of benefiting that case, is part of it is being in treatment. And I don't want to bash that. I don't want to knock that. I don't want to have a negative impact on that or them, because I hope everything works out well. But I'm just saying, like, what's up with Wino though? You know, you know what I mean? Like when it comes to being able to speak in this podcast about things that's on my mind within recovery, it don't just mean, yeah, just do another day, take another, you know, it's like a journalist. I'm part journalist. I'm part photographer. I'm part music engineer. You know what I mean? Part revolutionary. You know, but I'm not like, not Malcolm X. I don't know, or Martin Luther King. I don't know. I'm technically, I think I would be more behind the scenes of whatever it is. Like, even with the music, I wanted to be a little more behind the scenes. I ain't trying to really just come and just start no shit. You know, I want everybody to succeed, and everybody that's under that federal pretrial context, I hope everything works out for the best. You know, but then when I think about me as a demographic, you know, as a so-called African American male, whatever, and from my culture and my history and the place where I grew up, you know, I see this happening. Go to jail. 20 people go to jail, all of them do time. Then I'm here, it's like 20 people with a fighting chance, with an opportunity, with you know, stop having this double society, man. to stop having this double society, or this double standard, you know. And, and it's like, I could speak on that in the podcast. You know, if I go to groups or something like that, and I start speaking like that in a group, you know, it's kind of could bring down the energy of the group. I don't want to go into a group comparing what somebody in the group is going through or what their situation is, because they don't know why. You know, they just going by what they cards are, playing the hand that they was dealt, as they say. You know, so they don't know that in my mind I'm comparing their experience to some extent to people like Wino. You know, like, damn, you know, it's great that you have this opportunity, but I wonder how the homie could get that. You know, this dude inspired me, you know. So, and like I said, this is personal. So if it's things like that that I want to really go into, if I want to dedicate a show to a certain topic or a certain experience, you know, I want to be free to do that, and I am free to do that. I'm not bound to a meeting. I don't want anybody to attach their success or failure in a struggle to overcome addiction, you know, in a with what I say or do in this podcast. This is me. This is personal. You don't want to listen to me, you don't have to, you know. Look at me like a rapper, I guess. You know, they could be a rapper, they could be, damn flies, man. Flies. Anyway, but yeah, you know, so I just kind of want to isolate myself from the whole meeting, and you know, I don't want to come off as if by using words like peer support, things like that, to say that, you know, I'm censored. I'll censor myself, you know. You censor yourself, and if something I say or how I put something out brings you down, then tune out, you know. If anybody ever even tune in, like I said, it's just a public journal, so I'm gonna use it as I'm gonna live it as a private journal, but I'm gonna publish it and like that as a public journal. You know, this is live on Facebook, so it's public, but it's a private journal. You know, it's a personal tool of growth, a tool of personal growth and public engagement. You know, so you know, maybe it's other people, maybe it's somebody in California that understands those types of scenarios and resources and how to get things on ballots or petitions or things like that. Social advocates and freelance attorneys and community activists. You know, you never know. They might tune into the podcast on the episode where I'm speaking on something like that, like with Wino, and they say, "Oh, I never heard of that. You know, let me look into it. Let me go find this dude's blog post that he's talking about, see what he said about it." You know, and it's a link. They click the link on there, and it goes to the Federal Pretrial website or whatever, and it gives an explanation of what it is and all that. You know, and next thing you know, it could help. You know, that same scenario that's helping people here, that I'm seeing people get helped with it. Whereas from the projects where I'm from, they may not know nothing about it, and it may even be available already. But a lot of things that's available don't get shared with us sometimes, you know. So that's the point, you know what I mean? Like this is personal, but it is about, you know, recovery. You know, this is part of it is Sober Sunday. You know, it's celebrating just being sober, because the sober day being Sunday, Easter Sunday, April 17th, my grandma's birthday, 2022. So it kind of gives me something to look forward to every week, to be sober, and you know, because I don't want to, like, let's say I'll relapse and I start drinking on Tuesday, and then have another one on Wednesday, and another one on Thursday, and then Friday I get, you know, and then Saturday I'm but still on Sunday I know that I done messed up my sober day. And I want to keep my sober Sundays. I want to keep my sober day. I don't want to drink anymore. And this is a tool, a method to help me maintain my sobriety. And how I can make it work for me. That's what I want to do. I don't want to confine myself, or also I don't want to attach myself or falsely represent myself as if I'm using this podcast to help other people stay sober as a specific goal. I don't want to say to anybody, hey, watch my podcast, I can help you stay sober. Yeah, it's going I'm sharing some good stuff. If you're trying to stay sober, come watch it. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying, hey, this is me, man. I got some of my topics and stuff on there. If you ever want to check it out, get to know me a little better, but come in with an open mind or whatever. Or if you don't like it, make sure you tune out as soon as you can, But I don't recommend anybody attaching their sobriety to this podcast. Not right now. Right now it's personal, and I haven't been feeling heard. As far as so much in recovery in a lot of ways, I haven't been feeling heard. Sometimes I feel I can see and sense this big double standard sometimes. Which could be, they might feel you don't need it. Maybe they feel like, man, you smart, man. You got God on your side, man. You could do this without this stuff. Who knows? Maybe it's a good thing deep down. But then again, maybe it's one of them things like, no, let's keep this for us. And he ain't participating in our culture. So who knows? But this is a way for me to get it out. It all started with me writing. My brother he came out here to see me. I was like really like, man, come see me, man, Pastor. I need to see somebody, man. I was just feeling alone and homesick, and I was basically drinking. I was drinking probably 2-3 beers a day, here and there. And well, not every day, but I would. In big 211s, I'll drink 2 or 3 of them, get a cool ass buzz by the time I go to sleep or whatever. The next day I might not, but I consider that drinking. I was drinking, but he came see me, we're able to talk or whatever. And while he was here, the thought hit me real clear. Just write it down. So I ended up writing a lot of stuff down, and it kind of got a lot of stuff out and helped me kind of make a step forward, and that was claiming that sober date on that Sunday. Is when I started actually writing that stuff down, and I felt really deep in my heart that it was, it was a change that happened, and that, alcohol wasn't going to be playing as much a part of my life as far as the use of it, as far as, the overcoming of it and the giving back of experience of it. I felt that that was kicking in like this. It was leading, and that's what a concept of Fred now, from writing that day. Like the question was, what does my ideal treatment look like? And I was like, yeah, that's a good question, And I just started kind of writing about it, like, what is my ideal treatment? Well, it would be this, and it would be that, this fantastic, wonderful treatment plan, and it's just wonderful. I give me a Subaru Outback wagon, and me and Fred will be going out in the community, promoting sobriety, being sober, working with community organizations and doing photography, and Fred to be a comfort animal, and we'll be getting up every morning with a positive attitude, hope for the future, feeling good, feeling confident, and hopping in our Subaru Outback with our camera equipment or whatever we need for that day, going to hospitals, because Fred, he's so loving and everything. He brings people spirits and energy up, And so that was that was the idea. Just speaking of like an ideal treatment plan, an ideal concept of the future, and that included Fred because he's here and we're together. And so, and that's what the concept of. I said I'll call it Fred and I. And it was like, okay, after I wrote it, it was like, well, let's make a little logo for that. You know, it sounds like Fred and I. It's Fred and I. It's us. And that's where it came from, and that's how it progressed. Where now I'm sitting right here in front of this computer. We got Anchor over here going, recording the podcast. We got Facebook Live recording the video. It's still got a warning up here saying the frame rate too slow, but the live button is there, so hopefully it's actually still recording. You know, but that's where the concept of Fred and I came from, just hypothesizing about an ideal treatment. You know, and that was personal. And so now as the podcast is becoming more real and it's actually manifesting, a certain part of me is becoming aware of how it could be a contradiction between, you know, promoting recovery in the sense of having people gravitate to you as through you they can learn how to maintain their sobriety. And on the other hand, me having a lot of frustrations and mental processes and psychoses that I'll see that through this podcast I can work through personally as personal growth. And in that personal growth, it may not coincide with another person's efforts at sobriety. And I don't want that. I want to kind of lessen that possibility that somebody would tune into my podcast, being that, you know, it'll mention peer support or mention sobriety and recovery and rehabilitation, and then they feel that they can come to it and then it'll be like I'm misrepresenting. So I just want to kind of use this episode to just clarify that this is personal. You know, it could be about society. It could be about just, you know, something that happened during the week. It could be just being thankful to the family. It could be getting a certain special guest or somebody on here to speak about something. You know, once again, I'm going to mention Rap Chop, of course. You know, like say he come on and we play some of his music and he speak about his ideas of God and, you know, prison and growing up in Watts and the projects and, you know, doing this thing with the music and how that's going, you know. So that may not be anything to do with anybody's specific recovery in the sense of a person that's like looking for a meeting or looking for a sponsor or looking for something like that. You know, this podcast is not going to be bound by that. And it's not going to, you know, be defined by those boundaries. And those are good boundaries. Ain't nothing wrong with those boundaries. But this is personal. You know, this is personal. So, let's say if people start tuning in, you know, it may be because who knows? They might just tune in for one show. They say, oh, yeah, listen to this show. Dude spoke about this right here. It made some sense. Or this dude stupid as fuck said some stupid shit. Go listen to it. Who knows? You know, but I just want to establish the personalization of Fred and I in this podcast. There's aspects of Fred and I that I would love and I intend to grow into that will represent sobriety in a major professional way, a major loving, caring, and professional way. You know, respecting the protocols and boundaries of peer support and things like that, you know, to where it's a job in a sense and it's a public responsibility, but at the same time, you know, I'm an individual and I have a personal life, and this is from personal efforts. You know, if Fred and I, if this podcast was born from, let's say, me working within a certain organization, and and this organization was about recovery and rehabilitation, and through that, they sponsored Fred and I, the podcast. Then that would representation of what that organization represents. That would just be automatic. That would just be understood. Okay, if it was, 123 recovery.org or whatever, and they say, yeah, we like your concept, let us help you get this podcast cracking. We think you could bring something to the table, then I would be in alignment with them. But this comes through Demaji Design and Photography, GRA and Digiman. This comes from these computers and these phones right here. So nobody sponsored in the sense of like that. So it's personal. This is like personal effort. However God is controlling my body and making things, however that's going, this is what's producing. It's nobody's organization is over it. I don't have a page where it says sponsors, and these people are sponsoring it. And if I misrepresent, then I'm in violation of our relationship as sponsors. So that's what that's about. Fred, what's up, Fred? How you doing, man? But yeah. So that's the whole point of it. But so like I say, this episode, this is personal. Oh man. I'm gonna go ahead and tune out. It's past 12 o'clock, so it's Monday morning. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see what happens next week. All love and blessings. Thank God. In His name, amen.